This move by a major nation state is going to force the Fed to cut interest rates, sending a bunch of money towards Bitcoin, which could make the price skyrocket in flight and absolutely take off at a pace that we haven't quite seen before. And with all of this, it's not just because of the institutional demand, the countries, the nation states, everybody coming and buying, and the potential of a supply shock, but it's something that's built into the monetary system that very few people outside of the Bitcoin space are talking about. So we're going to break all this down today and give you the math as to where I think Bitcoin is going by the end of this year on a conservative, a normal, and on a bullish run here very, very quickly. But first, let's dive into this news on what we heard here today. The Bank of England just cut interest rates to 4%. Now, why is this significant? Well, because the US always seems to be last, right? We always got the joke now with Donald Trump. Well, it's too slow, pal. He is refusing to cut interest rates, and he's going to be moving at a very, very slow pace. But the US now seems to be looking at this and saying, hey, you know what? Maybe in this 41 days, well, we should cut interest rates too, as we're seeing the projections for the United States Fed to cut interest rates go up to a shocking 91.4%. And it didn't just happen, right? If you check, one day ago, it was at 94%, but a week ago, it was at 37%, right? So the overall chance of cutting to 25 basis points is right there. It's right for the grasping. Now, I'll be curious to see if we'll cut by 50 basis points here, but Goldman Sachs has already come out and said that they expect 3 rate cuts by the end of this year. And what have we already seen throughout this year? Well, we've seen the M2 money supply hit a record high. All the while, the United States has been keeping interest rates very high. So what does this mean, you might ask? Well, when the United States starts cutting, the big print, as Larry Lepard has coined it, or, the amount of money that starts flowing in is going to be exponential. Now, let's look at some charts here. Let's get some chart boys stuff going on here. The global M2 money supply points to 170,000 by October 2025 because the M2 money supply usually is a 100-day leading indicator of Bitcoin. Or in other words, Bitcoin lags about 100 days from that. So we see this actually start to come here very, very quickly. And I think that where we're going to start to see this increase is later this month and all through the month of September. And Bitcoin continues to track it. It's unreasonably accurate. As liquidity rises, so does Bitcoin. And it checks out, right? But what did we see? What was the most massive amounts of money printing and global liquidity increasing over time? Well, let's just take a few years back here. We saw this in 2020 to 2021. Literally going from all the way down to like about 4,000 Bitcoin to, seeing Bitcoin's price skyrocket almost to that 70,000 mark and absolutely hum along. So I did a little math for you guys to kind of compare where we are now and look at the possibilities of where we could go, or where we are now, and look at the possibilities where we could go based on what happened in 2020. And I know that was an outrageous event, but we can keep looking forward and look at some of this map. So in 2020 to 2021, we saw the M2 money supply grow by 24.2% in 1 year, right? So that peaked at 26.9%, historical high. Some even called it 38.5%, seeing it absolutely just shoot up 40% in 2 years. Now, with Bitcoin's price there, it rose a 543% increase year over year. So it went from under 30K to about 64K, even later, higher this year, above that all-time high. So rallying 543%, well, let's take a breakdown of where we at right now. So in January to June of this year, we're at about 4.5%. So taking a step back, that's not relatively close to where we saw of this, 24.2% or 26%. I use this 24 number just to be conservative. So we're sitting at about 4.5% now of global M2 monetary supply growth. But like I said, we aren't even to the point where the United States is printing money just yet, right? So we've seen the M2 money supply rise by nearly 5% already without the US cutting rates. So let's look. What's the base case? If the US cuts interest rates 3 times, which is not my projection, this is from Goldman Sachs, right? This is from Goldman Sachs. They say we're going to cut interest rates 3 times. So if we cut interest rates 3 times, we're seeing, all right, a base case of 4 to 6%, 6 to 8% of a bull case, and a bear case of 2 to 4% if we continue in that monetary easing. So I use this 6 to 8%, right? That's where I think that, we'll see the monetary supply growth go. So here's some math, folks. So then, essentially, this 543.6% that the U.S. went up, well, the QE would be 3 times less if what we're seeing than what we saw in 2020. So that would be about 182 or 182%, give or take, increase on the Bitcoin price, which would give us, at a base case, of $327,000 per Bitcoin. And I know that you guys are talking like, hey, this is absolutely crazy. Why are we talking about 327? I know the title says 1 million. Well, that is just the base bear case, right? I mean, we already saw this. We've gone up 5% nearly in M2 money supply without anybody cutting interest rates, or without the US cutting interest rates, and everybody else just doing it. So if everybody else follows suit and we see the massive amounts of money printing that we saw, and we do increase by that 543.6%, well, at the Bitcoin's current price, that gives us 755,000 per Bitcoin with all of that. Now, we take this a step further, right? We have the massive amounts of buying pressure coming in, and then we also have Trump's one big beautiful bill. Now, I know you guys are coming here for a little bit of this macro talk, but when the US government increases spending, that is also very, very correlated with the Bitcoin price. So the more government spending with QE, just by cutting interest rates at three times this year, we'll see 755,000 Bitcoin per Bitcoin by the end of this year, just from the cutting of the interest rates. On top of that, we get the one big beautiful bill coming in, adding government spending. And if we get maybe some more cuts early next year, well, things are off to the races, and that's where we're going to start to see Bitcoin potentially get to that 1 million mark early to summertime of next year. Now, I know that sounds absolutely crazy, and you guys are looking at me now with this mustache saying, hey, look at all of this, right? It's absolutely nuts. But we got to keep in mind this right here, what we're seeing with these Bitcoin strategy companies, treasury companies, right? 163 of them, 20 of them coming in the last, 30 days, nearly one a day coming in. The amount of purchasing is going up and up and up. And these are guys that are not selling, right? You look at this. Strategy has increased their buying by 60% since the new guy came in office. I don't know if you guys heard me correctly there. Strategy has purchased 60% of their 600,000 coins since Trump came into office. Trump has been in office since January. It's August. 60%. They've been implementing this strategy in over 4 or 5 years. That buying is accelerating and accelerating quickly, right? So this thing is going to continue to rise up. And, when we start to see that, the buying and government spending Bitcoin correlation go up, and the one big beautiful bill that is correlated, well, Trump has already come out and said it, right? So if they're keeping it and we see Trump saying, "Hey, you know what? This is going to be a big thing. We want to make sure that, hey, you know what? Everything is doing fine and dandy." He's already said all this. They're all about promises kept, promises said, promises kept, all of these different things. And even in that same speech, he said this. So he's already been hinting at it. Hey, Bitcoin's going to skyrocket more than your wildest expectations. And we see that all he wants to do, oh, well, we've got no audio on that, so I apologize. But anyway, Trump just essentially said that Bitcoin is going to skyrocket on there. Either way, and I see that you guys all are in the chat blowing it up. Either way, what we're starting to see is that this 91% chance to cut interest rates is going to all flood into Bitcoin. We're sitting here at 117K. And it's something that, we were sitting at 115, I believe, yesterday. So we've had a good couple days up over 2% in a day. So this is going to continue to rise up. And nobody is selling their Bitcoin at this point in time. I think that that's going to increase where more people are just hodling. And I encourage you guys to hodl along as well, because we've got great partners on this channel like Salt Lending who are giving you guys an exclusive offer. First, let me brag a little bit about Salt, why I like these guys. Because they do not do any rehypothecation. You don't have to worry about it. They've got even the Salt Shield, so you don't have to worry about liquidating if you want to. And they give some of the best rates, starting at 8.95%. They're one of the few companies that I see that is under that 10% mark. They've got the durations of 12 months. You could borrow up to 70%. I haven't seen too many that high just yet. So go to saltlending.com/greencandle or go down to the link in the show notes today and look into it. I mean, I definitely think you guys, if you guys are considering or needing some liquidity, don't worry about selling your corn. Look at these guys at Salt, man. They're absolutely excellent company. They've been around for over a decade. Now, let's give you guys some free sats for coming on in to the Green Candle live chat. So you guys know, bitcoinwell.com/green candle. You sign up, you get 500 wishing well tokens. On top of it, you buy Bitcoin, you get 500. And if you just hit that subscribe button and that like button, you will get free sats every time you come to the Bitcoin or to the Green Candle live chat. Boom, 377 sats to your dome piece. BTC Moon Guy. If you guys missed the 1 million, you're going to have to go back and listen, because I will go back here a little bit here, and I apologize that we didn't have any audio on the Trump, but basically what Trump was saying was, hey, you know what? Bitcoin is going to continue to grow, and it's going to grow quickly and quickly and quickly, and we're going to just keep winning. You guys are going to get tired of winning. These Bitcoiners, we're going to see this global M2 money supply keep increasing, right? They're going to keep debasing fiat. This is where I think that everything is, let's say, headed here. But where we're going to get some issues, I think, is going to be where we start to see these yield curves and everything else being delayed from market revisions. So we see the yield curve ended about 9 months ago here, according to the 10 to 2-year Treasury spread. Now, the market tends to follow these spreads here very, very quickly. BTC Moon Guy, how could you be tired of winning, man? We can't get tired just yet. We got more winning to do. Had to take a sip here because, man, we're seeing the HODL waves and the potential of this supply shock coming in all the while where we are starting to see Bitcoin getting scooped up off of exchanges at an all-time rate. The one thing I haven't even talked about yet was the hash rate hitting a new all-time high as well. So Bitcoin's getting scooped up off exchanges. We've got people hodling like absolute psychopaths through all of this. And on top of it all, we've got the hash rate hitting all-time highs and continuing to rise up. And Bitcoin always follows that, right? The hash rate is always a good indicator of where Bitcoin is going and just how quickly it is going to rise up. And, if we look at the faith in the dollar, for those of you guys who follow the other channel that I'm on, Macro Insights Pod, you guys know I go over this all the time, but the Dixie, the strength of the dollar is going down. It's at 98. We saw it absolutely crash here not too long ago. And the way that people look at the Dixie or the dollar is, this strength, right? Some people say, all right, if you get a weak dollar, they're going to flood into assets or some sort of inflation hedge. Well, what is Bitcoin, right? Maybe the best, most liquid asset on the planet. It's been absolutely crushing all of these guys here really quickly. And then we see the ETFs scooping up a bunch of Bitcoin at an all-time rate as well. I mean, all of these different factors on top of the Fed starting to cut interest rates. I mean, it's just a matter of time before we start to see a quick explosion with all of this. And so I'm trying to find it, but there is a chart out there that looks at government spending comparing to the overall, basis or compared to the Bitcoin chart here. But everybody loves this chart, the global liquidity, how it keeps expanding. We keep looking at the liquidity, comparing them all. And look at this gap here. Once we get the gaps, that's when we start to see it start to fill up and fill that gap. And so Bitcoin is going to start to skyrocket. I did some of the math for you guys earlier in this video. So if you came in a little bit late, make sure you go back to the beginning. I am going to keep this one a little bit shorter, but there's some bullish news here coming soon. So make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button with that like button. And I'm going to catch you guys all at the next one.